I've played Pokemon since the very beginning, and over the years I've accumulated a ton of games, many of them being used. One thing that always fascinated me about used Pokemon games was going back and looking at them to see what the previous owner was doing and what type of trainer they were. I made videos like this in the past which are pretty awesome to share with you guys, but over the last year or so I've acquired Pokemon games from all over the world, each with their own unique story forgotten by their original owner. Some of these games are from Japan and a few are from Europe, which have some really cool boxes. Let's take a look at these forgotten Pokemon adventures and see what the stories have to tell. Let's take a look at this PAL copy of Ruby version first. Loading up the game, I see our name is Karakas, which has a completed game that looks pretty legitimate. They left the game off at Route 116 by the Rust Turf Tunnel where you would normally get the black glasses. I move around a little bit and notice their secret bases here even. I wonder if they just moved their secret base here before selling the game or what, but let's look at their party first. Nothing really stood out here aside from level 81 Ninetales, which was by far their highest level Pokemon. Looking at their bag, there wasn't anything out of the ordinary either. They had a lot of repeat balls, at least more than any other Pokeball, so I guess they like to catch the same Pokemon over and over again. They had the Mach Bike registered and the Pokedex was interesting too. I noticed they started with Trico, but didn't have it on their team anymore. It's not too common to see people abandon their starter Pokemon. I also noticed they never battled against a Blaziken, which would have been the starter Pokemon their rival had. I didn't realize this before recording this video, but out of all the rival fights in Ruby and Sapphire, your rival will never battle you with their final form starter. I did notice they did find the 1% Surskit encounter, which was cool though, although they've never seen a Wailord. Their secret base just had some balloons in it, nothing too out of the ordinary here, and their trainer card says they entered the Hall of Fame with 49 hours played or so. They really poured a lot of time into this copy of Ruby version. I forgot this was a thing too, but you can even check the Pokénav to see what ribbons your Pokemon have. There weren't any special ribbons here, just Hall of Fame ribbons, the ribbons for maxing out your EVs, and a couple of contest ribbons. 35 SWAT, the Torkoal even won the Cool contest and has the ribbon to prove it. I have no idea what that nickname can mean for a Torkoal. Then there's a level 26 Feel with a cuss word for a name that entered the Hall of Fame, and this beautiful Rhydon with the ribbon to prove it. Now for the PC, there isn't anything too special here either. They bred their starter Sceptile to get a few Tricos, possibly to trade with friends, and many of their Pokemon seem to be named after people or other Greek words that I'm assuming are also bad words. I found the starter Sceptile in the PC here, which was holding TM07, the TM for Hail found in the Shoal Cave. Looking at their first Hall of Fame team, there's no starter Pokemon, but that Steel and 35 SWAT are here. The only thing in the daycare was a Banette that didn't even gain a level, so they must have gotten rid of this game shortly after putting Banette in the daycare. That's pretty much it for this European copy of Ruby version, so I just want to quickly show how to spot a fake Game Boy Advance Pokemon game. I wasn't too sure when I bought this game, so I was really careful, but if you look at the back of a real copy, the board will have these squares on the top corner. Then there's some dots with TP 1 through 3, while a lot of fake cards will have these dots spread across the back with no markings. If you have a sticker on the front of your game as well, you'll notice this number imprint, however some legitimate games don't have this imprint. There's a lot of signs to look at when looking for a fake GBA game, so be careful, but if you open up the cartridge and see a black spot on the board like this, then it's definitely a fake. The next game I got was this European copy of Fire Red, which was the only main series game I never had growing up. There was no save file on it, but since getting this game I've played through Fire Red again and use this as my main copy of Fire Red or Leaf Green when I shiny hunt. Now for something you don't see too often, the Japanese Game Boy Pokemon games. I have all of them here aside from Green version, which I got a few years ago, and Crystal, which I just don't have at all yet. Most of these Game Boy Pokemon games can be found pretty cheaply, except for Crystal, which is kind of expensive, although the batteries are notorious for dying on these older games. Let's take a look at the Red version first, which has some different sprites from the North American version of Red and Blue as seen from this Scyther and Weedle at the title screen. There is a save file on this game, however all they did was start with a Charmander and beat the rival, so I assume the battery was changed and whoever replaced it just tested to see if it worked, or somebody just really didn't like this game and returned it after beating the first trainer. Next for the Japanese Blue version, things get a bit more interesting. I noticed the Pokemon at the title screen appear on the opposite side of the trainer than they did in the Red version, and they also have their updated sprites like in the international releases. Japanese Blue was released after the Japanese version of Red and Green and is mostly the same game as we saw released internationally outside of Japan, but as for the save file, we have 3 badges with 6 hours played. Our party lead is a low-level Pidgey, followed by a Clefairy, an Oddish, their starter Venusaur at level 32, which isn't even their highest level Pokemon, then 2 level 43 Pokemon with the same sprite. I wonder what they could be. First up is a Golem, which is cool to see as it's a trait evolution, and as for the other Pokemon, it's just a second Golem at the same level. I wonder how or why these Pokemon even got here, but I imagine this was an actual save file from some Japanese person who just really liked Golem. I like Golem a lot too, and even have a Golem sticker on one of my DS Lites, and now that I think about it, as a kid I also had 2 Starmies on my first playthrough of Red version, so I also like having duplicate Pokemon on my team. Moving over to the Japanese copy of Yellow version, we have another early save file with only a single badge collected. We're right outside Mount Moon on this one, so I wonder if whoever had this game before me just got frustrated trying to get through Mount Moon and stopped playing the game. There wasn't too much to note on this save file, but they didn't purchase the Magikarp outside Mount Moon, so I of course had to do that for them. Moving on to Generation 2 with the Japanese Gold, I expect the battery to be dead and have no save file, but let's just admire the Japanese title screen on Gold version for a second. The Japanese one just looks cooler to me, and for all I know it could be the same in English, I have no idea. There is no save file on this copy of Gold though. For the Japanese Silver version, I had a hard time getting to work in my Game Boy player. The cartridge just wasn't reading, so I tried it on my Game Boy Advance SP and it worked, but also had no save file. That's it for the Game Boy games, and things get much more interesting on the DS games. I wish I got more, but there's only 3. We have a Japanese copy of Diamond version, a European copy of Soul Silver, and a European copy of Diamond version, which were all bangers. I just realized too that none of these games originate from North America, which is pretty neat. Starting off with the Japanese Diamond, we see it has 17 hours played, all 8 badges collected, and a completed Pokédex. I have my doubts that someone could do all of this legitimately in such a short amount of time, but we'll see. Loading into the game, we see the Pokétch app that shows your team is up, and we see a powerful team with Pokemon like Giratina, Lugia, Palkia, then, Anorith, I guess? Sure, you can be on the team. The Lugia is shiny level 100 with a Met location that looks like it's Route 218, meaning it's not legitimate. A lot of these Pokemon were obtained in around 2010 or so it looks like this might have been somebody's first save file of this game when it was new. And then when I look at the Anorith in our party, the Met date says March 20th, 2007. 1 month before the North American release of Diamond and Pearl, which is incredible to see. You can get fossil Pokemon pretty early on in Diamond and Pearl, so it checks out as legitimate. The trainer card was a little difficult to decipher though, since no matter how hard I tried to read it, I don't know Japanese. However, it looks like this person has done a lot of link trades and a few battles. They beat the game in about 22 hours of game time on June 12, 2007, or maybe that's December 6, 2007 since going off the Japanese calendar system. I checked out the bag next, and the first thing I see are 993 EXP shares. I don't know why anybody would ever need that many EXP shares, but looking at the rest of the bag, we see a max of nearly every TM and hundreds of Master Balls, so this game was super hacked. Now let's check out the real meat and potatoes, the PC. The first Pokemon we see here is a shiny Dratini at level 15, followed by a few shiny Lugias and a level 5 Articuno. There were quite a few of those level 15 shiny Dratinis spread throughout this PC though, and a ton of other various shinies. Most of the shinies were level 100 or so, but I was still so confused by the sheer amount of shiny Dratini. There was even a level 100 shiny Charmander here. Why would anybody ever do that? At one point I noticed a shiny Pokemon next to their non-shiny form too a few times, like the Slowkings, and a ton of Starlies and Bidoofs. I can only assume that the person who originally bought this game just caught every single Pokemon they saw at the very start of the game, which would explain all these Bidoofs and Starlies, or maybe they tried radaring for them, or just caught everything they saw. They would have also encountered Shinxes though if this was at the first fight of the game. There's no Shinxes here. Either way, it's pretty strange. Before finishing up the box, I grabbed 2 random eggs to hatch them later, then check out the Hall of Fame before heading outside. The first one we see is their 19th and final Hall of Fame entry on December 12th, 2008, with a few shiny level 100 Pokemon and a random Marshtomp. I guess they were trying to level up this Marshtomp in the Elite Four, but they clearly had access to a cheating device, so I don't see why it makes a difference. Their first Hall of Fame entry was on December 7th, 2006, about 2 months after release of Diamond and 4 months before the American release. It looks like a pretty typical team for a first playthrough of Sinnoh, although their Kadabra is a whopping level 75. The other Hall of Fame entries just feature random hacked shiny Pokemon, so let's just focus on hatching these 2 eggs for now, as anything can hatch from them. While hatching the first egg, I go on over to the Daycare app in the Pokétch and see a Ditto with a Gallade, so I assume that this first egg, or maybe both of these eggs, would be a Ralts, but they took much longer for it to hatch for it to just be a Ralts. Instead, the very first egg we hatched was a Dratini, not sure why that surprised me as there was like a million in the PC, but this one wasn't shiny. And then the second egg took much longer to hatch, but hatched into an Eevee. I didn't notice any Eevees or Eeveelutions in the box, so this was really a surprise to me. That's pretty much it for this game now, so let's check out the European copy of Soul Silver next. The game in the front of the case was in English, but has some Greek writing on the back. While the PAL versions of these games can sometimes be found in other European languages like German, Spanish, or Italian, they didn't translate them to every single European language in every country they were released in, so many countries in Europe just got the English version with their local language written on the back and in some of the inserts. At the title screen, we see the game previously belonged to Clio. They played for 197 hours, collected all 16 gym badges, but only managed to get 142 Pokemon for their Pokedex. I loaded in the Pokemon Center right in front of the person you talk to trade Pokemon, so I'm guessing before this person traded in this game to the game store that I got it from, they traded away some of their most valuable Pokemon. Looking at their party though, the first Pokemon I see is their starter Feraligatr, which only knows 4 HM moves at level 90 and is named Max, a level 99 Palkia met at level 16 on Route 208, which is not legitimate, and also has an OT of Nick, meaning this Palkia was traded over. We'll see more Pokemon from Nick later on, like this Giratina. Then we see a Sceptile transferred out from Hoenn in 2009, which is pretty cool to see. This also must have been transferred over to Diamond and Pearl first, then traded over to this copy of Soul Silver, as Soul Silver released in 2010. I used to transfer up a lot of my Pokemon from Emerald or Leaf Green version as a kid, so I wonder if this Sceptile was also from Clio's copy of Ruby, Sapphire, or Emerald. Looking at their trainer card, they started the game in August of 2010, and they entered the Hall of Fame on March 16, 2011, right before the release of Pokemon Black and White. I did notice it says that they have a Hall of Fame time of 17 minutes, or rather it's just 00.17. I thought the trainer card listed the amount of in-game time it took to beat the game, and 17 minutes is just impossible to do legitimately, so I thought maybe this was the actual time of day they used to beat the game, and they just beat the game shortly after midnight one night. I checked my old copy of Soul Silver to try to verify this, and it says I had a final game time of 15:43 for the Hall of Fame, which could also be the actual time I beat the game at. I had no idea, not playtime, but every other Pokemon game, including the 2 copies of Diamond version we'll look at in this game, show actual playtime, so I don't know what's going on. They did sign their trainer card though, which kind of looks like a K with a scribble on it, but hey, that's a better signature than I could do as a kid. I don't know why I'm assuming everybody who owned these Pokemon games before me was a kid, as I'm still playing these exact games well into my 20s, but enough making me feel like a fossil. Let's look at their PC in Soul Silver. The first box has a ton of unknown forms, so I guess they wanted to find the entire alphabet, then just stopped at one point. This person nicknamed a lot of their Pokemon too, like Spyro the Mareep and Rudolph the Stantler, but many of them just had normal people names, which I'm guessing were their friends or classmates. We also find this level 33 Celebi called a Master Ball, also from Nick. Then this Dialga, also from Nick, looks legitimate based off the Met location and the level. Another weird Pokemon we found here was level 100 Nidorino called a Master Ball with an OT of Sean. I don't know why you would do it, but it is a stone evolution, so at least you could still evolve it at level 100. The box wasn't too full in this game, and I noticed some things that were missing, like the red Gyarados and many legendary Pokemon you can catch in this game. Heart Gold and Soul Silver let you catch a lot of legendary Pokemon from previous games, so I don't know what this person was doing for 197 hours of game time if they weren't catching legendary Pokemon, shiny hunting, or doing competitive battling. I checked the Pokedex though and see they did have a Groudon, Latios, Articuno, and Moltres at one point, so I'm guessing they traded them out of this game before selling them, or perhaps their friend Nick traded them hacked Pokemon for their legit legendary Pokemon. That used to happen to me as a kid a little bit sometimes. Like this one time when somebody promised to trade me a shiny Feraligatr that they said was legitimate, only for me to later notice that it was caught in a Master Ball, which was impossible at the time. I stepped down to the Pokemon Center next and noticed 2 items I didn't recognize were registered in the touchscreen. Most people registered the bike or a fishing rod, but this first one registered was the Apricorn box, which was empty. The second one was the Versus recorder. This person didn't have many battles recorded, actually just had 1 battle recorded, which was this 1v1 of a level 100 Latios one-shotting a level 83 Altaria, which I assume is from the Battle Frontier. Since we're riding Goldenrod City, I checked out the daycare next and see just a lone Ditto, then I checked out the Lake of Rage to see what happened with that red Gyarados. It wasn't in the PC, and I thought you were forced to battle it in the main story, but I checked anyway to see if it was there, and it was gone. At this point, I realized I forgot to check out the Hall of Fame, so I returned to the PC and take a look and see a pretty cool team. We have the starter Feraligatr named Max level 87, the level 53 Sceptile from Hoenn, Dialga, Latios, Palkia, and Articuno. I realized I was looking at the second Hall of Fame entry, not the first one, as they only have 2 Hall of Fame entries, so I go back to the first Hall of Fame entry to see a more typical Johto team. There's level 50 Lugia, so they did have one at one point, a level 43 Growlithe, then a regular Gyarados at level 20. I thought this would be the red Gyarados when I first saw it, but I guess they just knocked it out when they battled it, as there's no reason to use a lower level non-shiny Gyarados at this point. Then there's a Ponyta, Onix, and a level 71 Fralgear that must have carried them to the Hall of Fame, since most of their Pokemon were a pretty low level. They even had 2 fire types on their first Hall of Fame team, which is tied for the max amount of unique fire type Pokemon lines you could have in Diamond and Pearl before entering the Hall of Fame. That's about it for that copy of Soul Silver, which I might reset soon to try to get a shiny starter in this game, as the shiny starters are a pretty quick reset for Heart Gold and Soul Silver, since you actually see the shiny form before you pick the starter in the carousel. We have one more game to look at now though, this European copy of Diamond that was purchased in Greece as well. On this copy of Diamond, we see that Corrin played 57 hours, got all 8 gym badges, and completed the Pokedex. That seems like a good amount of time to do the Pokedex legitimately, so let's check out their party, and the first thing I see is level 100 Shiny Regigigas with an OT of Ice Lord, holding a red chain. I thought the red chain was a key item, and it is, at least according to Bulbapedia. And looking at the rest of the team, we have a shiny Darkrai with a weird OT and trainer ID of just 00000, a level 100 Graveler, which now that I think about it is pretty funny, since at the start of this video we saw 2 Golems and now we have a level 100 Graveler. Then randomly the gift Eevee you get from BB in Heart Home City. Looking into their PC, we see another shiny level 100 Lugia, this time named Magma, a shiny Deoxys also holding a red chain with an OT of Outer Space, then a ton of other Pokemon with an OT of Steve and a lot of hacked Pokemon. There was a regular non-shiny Shaman here caught at the Flower Paradise, which could have been legitimate, and also a Manaphy that set out a ride from Pokemon Ranger, which could possibly be legit too. But looking at what else is on this cartridge of this game, I think it's very likely that these also aren't legitimate. There were even some Pokemon that said they were caught at the Pokemon League, like this level 100 shiny Gallade, and a ton of Mightyena randomly with different nicknames. Circling back to the earlier boxes though, these look like mostly legit Pokemon. I found a couple of eggs here and went to hatch them, but they were nothing special, as the first egg that hatched was the gift Happiny egg you get from Cynthia, and the second egg was Riley's Riolu. If we check the Pokédex app of recently obtained Pokemon though, we see that the last Pokemon Corrin got in this game was the gift Eevee, then right before that was the Shaman and the Manaphy before that. The other Pokemon on this list aren't too special outside of Heatran, which I also found in the PC and had its normal Met location and Met level, so that was probably legit. I also decided to check out the mystery gift for the DS games, and the PAL version of Soul Silver and the PAL Diamond version didn't have any Wonder Cards in the mystery gift, but I did check the Japanese copy of Diamond the next day, since I forgot to do it while recording the initial part of the video, and saw what looks like legit Wonder Cards for an event Arceus, Pikachu, and Jirachi, all from nearly 15 years ago or more. I've collected quite a few older Pokemon games recently and plan on getting more, since I've been really into shiny hunting lately and want more games to shiny hunt in multiple games at once, or to do things like starter resets which require a brand new save file. And if you want to see my shiny hunting streams live, check out my Twitch channel linked below, and while you're at it, consider clicking that like button and subscribing to this channel. But for now, that was really fun looking at all these old Pokemon save files from across the world, so thank you so much for watching, have a great rest of your day, I'll see y'all next time, and bye bye!